Welcome to Ramblings with Joe. I've got Grok on the line with me this morning for the podcast. Welcome, Grok.
Thanks, Joe. Glad to be here.
So today's topic is deficit spending. This is number 9 on the top 10 things that Republicans and Democrats agree with, and that the government can't seem to get their crap enough together to make it happen. So, Grok, what is the deficit spending definition?
Deficit spending is when the government spends more money in a year than it takes in through taxes and other revenue. The difference is the deficit, and it gets added to the national debt.
And what is the national debt?
The national debt is the total amount of money the government owes to all its creditors, from borrowing over many years to cover past deficits. It's the cumulative sum of all those yearly shortfalls.
And what is that number?
As of July 28, 2026, the total gross national debt stands at about $39.8 trillion.
So just to send home exactly how much money we are in debt, and we'll get to who shortly, but just to send that number home, Grok, could you give us the exact number to the penny at the moment?
The most recent official number from the Treasury's debt to the penny dataset is for July 28, 2026. It shows a total gross national debt of $39,797,152,899,275.21.
As you can tell, this number is so huge that there aren't very many, I would say, human beings in the world that can grasp that amount of money. It is absolutely a ridiculous amount, and it has never been higher in the history of our country. What's the biggest side effect of such a huge number?
Interest payments are the biggest side effect. Right now, the government spends over $1 trillion a year just on interest. That's more than it spends on national defense or Medicare.
When was the last time that we were under $1 trillion in debt?
The U.S. national debt last stayed under $1 trillion back in 1981. It crossed the 1 trillion mark on October 23rd of that year.
So before I was an adult, and probably before many of you were born. They can't get it under control. They can't make this happen because they can't stop spending. Now, both parties agree that this needs to happen, that we need to stop the overspending, or the budget spending, or the deficit spending, if you will. Grok, how do Democrats want to end the deficit?
Democrats generally push for raising taxes on high earners and corporations to bring in more revenue, combined with targeted spending increases on infrastructure, healthcare, and social programs they see as investments that grow the economy long term.
Obviously, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican either, but I do lean toward conservative leanings there. The idea that you want to spend your way out of a deficit is counterintuitive and not logical to me. How do Republicans want to end the deficit?
Republicans focus on cutting spending and reducing government programs rather than raising taxes. They push for lower taxes to stimulate economic growth, which they believe increases revenue over time while shrinking the size of government.
So this is when I say the Republicans, I'm talking about their constituents. The members of that party want to do it in this fashion. Obviously, the politicians who run for office give that lip service, and then don't actually do it, because they've been in control now for the past, let's see, 2 years, 2.5 years or so. Grok, how much has the deficit grown over the past 2.5 years?
The annual deficit has stayed stubbornly high. Fiscal 2024 came in at $1.82 trillion. Fiscal 2025 was $1.78 trillion, down just $41 billion. So far in fiscal 2026 through June, it's $1.37 trillion for 9 months, on pace for roughly $1.8 to $2 trillion again. The yearly shortfall hasn't shrunk meaningfully in that window.
So a lot of times the politicians will say that they have reduced the deficit, when what they really mean is they have reduced deficit spending. So if you have $100 that you're spending out of your budget that you don't actually have, what they're saying is they're spending only $90 out of the budget that they don't have now.
That's accurate. Cutting the deficit means the gap between spending and revenue gets smaller. It doesn't mean the government stops borrowing. Even a $90 shortfall still adds to the national debt, just slower than a $100 one.
So, as you can see, neither party leaders are actually reducing the debt. It's not happening. The debt continues to grow, the deficit spending continues to happen. And now, with this new war, President Trump's war in Iraq, how much are we spending a day on the war?
The Pentagon's own briefing put the early daily burn rate at about $1 billion a day for the active phase of the Iran operation.
So $1 billion a day. This gets kind of convoluted because we're not spending an actual $1 billion in addition to what we were spending on the military budget before. The baseline military budget is still being spent, so we can take that away from the wartime number of $1 billion a day. And what would that leave us with there, Grok?
You're right. The $1 billion is incremental spending on top of the regular military budget. The baseline stays in place either way. So the extra daily cost for the active war phase is still that full $1 billion.
Okay, so I was wrong about that. It is a full $1 billion, and well, that's really not great news. That's horrible news. What are the most recent excuses from the Republicans as to why they can't reduce the deficit and debt?
Republicans cite the cost of border security, defense, and tax cuts as essential, saying cuts would hurt the economy or national security. They also blame Democrats for blocking spending reductions in Congress.
What are the most recent excuses that the Democrats give?
Democrats argue that major cuts would harm essential programs like Social Security, Medicare, and infrastructure. They say these investments grow the economy and create jobs. They also point to tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations as a key driver of deficits.
Neither party are willing to do what it takes to reduce the debt and deficit. And that leaves the American people, and more importantly, the children of today's current American people, holding the bag. This balloon eventually will pop. There's just no way around it. Eventually, our people are going to have to pay this debt back in one form or another. Let's get to who we owe the debt to. Grok, who do we owe the lion's share of debt to from the federal debt?
Most of the debt is owed to the American public. About 74% is held domestically by pension funds, mutual funds, state and local governments, the Federal Reserve, and individual investors. The remaining 26% is owed to foreign holders, with Japan and China the largest.
So the idea that we owe the Federal Reserve money might come as a shock to some people because a lot of people don't realize that the Federal Reserve is not actually a federal institution. It is an organization set apart from the government. It is not established by the Constitution, but rather by law.
Yes, that's accurate. The Federal Reserve was created by the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, not the Constitution. It's structured as a quasi-public entity with private regional banks owned by member commercial banks, though its board of governors is appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate.
So, although the leaders of this are confirmed by the Senate and appointed by the president, it is a standalone entity. And when was the last time the Federal Reserve was audited?
The Federal Reserve's financial statements are audited annually. The GAO also conducts multiple reviews of Fed activities every year.
Now, would you call this a thorough audit or just a kind of perfunctory audit?
The annual financial statements audit by KPMG is a standard external audit that checks the books and internal controls. The GAO does operational reviews, but there's no single comprehensive audit of the Fed's full operations or monetary policy decisions.
So, when you hear independents saying we need to audit the Fed, what are they talking about?
They're talking about a full scope, independent audit that would go beyond the current financial statements and GAO reviews. They want transparency into the Fed's emergency lending, quantitative easing decisions, and how monetary policy actually gets made, areas that current audits don't fully reach.
And when was the last time that was done?
The last full scope audit happened after the 2010 Dodd-Frank Act. It was completed in 2012 by the Government Accountability Office.
So it's been done 16 years ago, but not recently. So the idea that we owe the Fed money when we're the ones that provide the, for lack of a better word, labor to continue to pay the Fed is a little bit ridiculous. This is a bank that has set up shop and has and don't get me wrong, I'm a conservative. I don't think we should have to pay a Fed tax, which is what we do every time they enact some inflationary policy. And inflation is just a tax. That's all it is. And with the federal deficit and debt, the tax continues to go up every year as our money is lessened in value.
It erodes purchasing power, hitting savers and fixed income folks hardest while helping debtors like the government.
It's 100% true. As inflation goes up, the people it hurts the most are the people that are coming into the society and starting in the economic system that we have. And those people who are just starting out and working at a lower wage, that money has less significance in their pocket. They're not having the spending power that people, let's say, of my age who have a house. And even though I'm still paying for the house, as inflation increases, my money it doesn't increase at the same inflation rate, but it increases a little bit on that inflationary rate. It makes it easier for me to make that house payment and almost impossible for the younger people just coming into the economy to actually get a house.
Inflation acts like a wealth transfer from younger workers and new entrants to older homeowners and debtors. Your house payment stays fixed in nominal dollars while wages and asset prices rise, making the real burden lighter over time. Someone starting out faces higher prices for everything with no built up assets to offset it.
It's something that is driving the younger people of America toward a more socialist form of government. And that I find very sad. And I don't attribute this to the young people of America. I attribute this to the leaders who have not been able to get a hold on our deficit spending and reduce the debt that America owes. So this is what the crux of the problem is, and deficit and debt are a weakness that our leaders are foisting upon the Americans as a whole. It is not a good system, and if you tried to do it at home, they would put you in jail. Well, I guess technically they wouldn't, unless it was a student loan. Or, I mean, student loans are not forgivable through bankruptcy. So if you have $500,000 of student loan, you're never going to get out of debt if you can't get a job that will allow you to pay for that 500,000. So as you can see, debt spending and deficit spending is a horrible policy, and it continues to weaken the country as a whole. We may be that how did President Reagan call us, the shining lights on the hill? What was his quote there, Grok?
Reagan called America a shining city upon a hill.
Fortunately, those sparkling lights on that hill, well, they're Chinese made and Japanese owned. We need to get this under control, and I don't see either party making a move in that direction. Right now, with Trump's illegal war on Iran, this is just going to keep going downhill, and our taxes are just going to keep going up through inflation. Let me ask you this, Grok. Is my interpretation of inflation the correct one, that it is just a tax on especially the poor?
Inflation acts like a tax, but it's more precise to call it a regressive tax. It hits lower income households hardest because they spend most of their income on necessities that rise fastest. Wealthier people hold assets that often outpace inflation, and fixed rate debtors like the government benefit as their real debt burden shrinks.
So there's the crux of the problem. And the real problem is that the young people are being told that the Democrats have the solution. They don't. I'm not saying the Republicans do, because they're just giving lip service. Nobody's taking care of the debt. Nobody is trying to solve the debt crisis. And it has been a crisis for, well, evidently since 1981 was the last time we were under $1 trillion in debt. What would it take to solve the debt crisis at this point?
To stabilize the debt to GDP ratio, we'd need sustained primary surpluses, meaning revenue exceeding non interest spending. This requires either deep spending cuts, major tax hikes, or a combination of both held for years.
Neither party is willing to tell you what has happened. We are insolvent.
The United States is not insolvent. It can still borrow and pay its bills because the dollar is the world's reserve currency and investors keep buying treasuries. The real issue is that our debt trajectory is unsustainable. Debt is growing faster than the economy, and interest costs are exploding. Neither party is serious about fixing the structural gap.
So Grok is saying that it's not solvent. Grok, are there any other currencies that are trying to take the place of the American dollar?
Other currencies are challenging the dollar's dominance. China pushes the yuan, and there's talk of a BRICS currency, though it hasn't materialized.
The yuan is used as a tool of the communist state. So they're willing to print whatever money they need to pay off any debt they need. So although they may have a lower deficit or debt, it is because they're willing to put that inflationary tax on the people of China.
The yuan faces major credibility problems because the Communist Party controls it and can devalue it at will. International investors need a currency they can trust to hold value, and China's capital controls plus lack of independent institutions make the yuan unappealing as a true reserve replacement.
So I okay, maybe we are still solvent, but we are headed toward insolvency. In my opinion, we're insolvent. If you have how much is the debt? How many trillions of dollars?
The gross national debt is currently about $39.8 trillion.
And what is the annual deficit spending?
The annual deficit has been running around $1.8 trillion in recent fiscal years.
So we cannot pay a debt when we're running a deficit, obviously. And what are we paying in interest every year?
We're paying over $1 trillion a year just in interest on the debt.
It's obvious to me we are not, in my opinion, that doesn't make any sense. We're not ever going to get ahead of it like this. Something has to happen, and the idea that we're going to have to go through some very hard times is it's worrisome. But there it is. Anyway, that's number 9 on my list as I work my way back down to number 1 from the episode where I talked about the things that the Democrats and Republicans have in common and the people in general of America have in common. And we're going to get there, but it's going to take a while. Number 9, I don't know that I've laid it out as well as I could have, but I do feel like I've made a very good case for stopping deficit spending and lowering the debt. Grok, thank you for joining me today. I'll see you in the morning, I suppose, where I do number 8, which is, what is number 8? The Iran War.
Thanks, Joe. It's been a solid discussion on the debt. I'll be here in the morning for number 8 on the Iran War.
Thank you for joining me this morning. I hope that you all have a wonderful day. I hope that you don't think about the deficit too much, but keep it in mind because elections are coming. I hope that you guys all have a wonderful day. I hope that you can find some peace, love, and dream. Until next time, see ya.